John F. Kennedy comes to life. A formal black and white head and shoulders portrait of President John F. Kennedy facing the camera, taken in 1961. President John F. Kennedy addresses a joint session of Congress on May 25, 1961, to deliver his historic Urgent National Needs speech. Senator John F. Kennedy shares a tender moment with his daughter, Caroline, as she joyfully waves during a 1960. President John F. Kennedy meets with a former White House staff member in Washington, D.C. on October 27, 1961. President John F. Kennedy and First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy arrive at the National Guard Armory for an inaugural ball in Washington, D.C. on January 20, 1961. Lieutenant John F. Kennedy is pictured at the helm of the PT-109 torpedo boat in the South Pacific, circa 1943. John F. Kennedy sits on a diving board with his nephew Christopher Kennedy Lawford at a pool in Los Angeles in 1960. President John F. Kennedy and First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy are pictured smiling in the back of an open-top limousine during their motorcade in Dallas, Texas, on November 22, 1963. President John F. Kennedy walks with his son, John Jr., past a classic 1954 Chevrolet in Hyannisport, Massachusetts, during Labor Day weekend in 1963. Queen Elizabeth II and U.S. President John F. Kennedy smiling during a formal state dinner at Buckingham Palace in June 1961. President John F. Kennedy spends time with his children, John F. Kennedy Jr. and Caroline Kennedy, alongside their pony Macaroni, at the White House's West Wing colonnade on June 22, 1962. August 23, 1962. President Kennedy addresses the AM Vets Convention in New York City by telephone. White House, Oval Office. The Kennedy family in 1931, with John F. Kennedy featured at the upper left alongside his parents, Joseph Sr. and Rose Kennedy, and his siblings. President John F. Kennedy waves to a massive, enthusiastic crowd from an open-top 1956 Cadillac limousine during his historic motorcade through Patrick Street in Cork, Ireland, on June 28, 1963. John F. Kennedy beams at a crowd of supporters upon his arrival in Los Angeles for the 1960 Democratic National Convention, the very day he secured his party's presidential nomination. John F. Kennedy and his wife, Jacqueline Kennedy, are seen campaigning in New York in 1960 amidst a crowd and political posters. President John F. Kennedy arrives at Kindley Air Force Base in Bermuda on December 21, 1961, ahead of meetings with UK Prime Minister Harold Macmillan. Interesting facts. He was the youngest elected U.S. president, taking office at age 43. Kennedy was the first Roman Catholic president in U.S. history. Kennedy served in the U.S. Navy during World War II and became a war hero after saving his crew when his patrol boat, PT-109, was sunk by a Japanese destroyer in the Pacific. Despite his public image of vitality, Kennedy suffered from chronic health problems, including severe back pain, Addison's disease, and gastrointestinal issues, which he often hid from the public. His inaugural address contained the famous line, "Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country," which inspired a generation of Americans to civic action. He strongly supported the U.S. space program, setting the goal of landing a man on the moon before the end of the 1960s, which motivated NASA and the country to achieve this historic feat. Kennedy played a crucial role during the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962, successfully negotiating with the Soviet Union to prevent a nuclear conflict. Kennedy was widely admired for his charisma, humor, and public speaking skills, which made him extremely popular both in the U.S. and abroad. Kennedy loved sailing and the sea, often spending time on his yacht, the Honeyfits, and enjoying boating trips in Massachusetts. His presidency is often romanticized as Camelot, symbolizing hope, idealism, and a period of cultural optimism in the early 1960s. He was tragically assassinated on November 22, 1963, in Dallas, Texas, an event that shocked the world and became one of the most scrutinized moments in modern history. Thanks for watching.